down. One of the things I've noticed, especially with some of the women's organizations, there's always somebody ready to say bad things. And
Yeah.
we have to not listen to that. We also have to not listen to the rumors. The rumor mill is crazy on this thing. That's the worst part of the Facebook and those other media things, is the rumor mill. And it gets so big, and then it grows, and then it starts hurting people. We almost lost Emzl from, I call it meanness. It's just meanness. You know, there are ways to teach, especially about racism. There are ways to teach about treating people of color with respect and recognizing that we are the same, all of us. Even though our backgrounds are so varied, we're in this organization, we're in this community. I call us, we're families. We're not a family, we're multiple families, but we're connected. There's such an interconnection. And if we continue to destroy our organizations, where are we going to be able to go? What's going to happen to us? So those people who are pissed off and say, oh, I don't want to teach anymore. Well, what the hell are you supposed to be doing? Teaching. That's what you're supposed to be doing. My grandmother said, and I'm going to say a lot of my grandmother's stuff right now because this is one of my pet peeves, is my grandmother said that is what I was going to have to do in my lifetime. And she said, all of us who lived to my lifetime, we're going to have to be teachers. We're going to have to teach people how to be living with the earth again. We're going to have to teach people how to care about each other again, because it was going to go where science and money were only things that were worshipped. She never called it money. She called it rocks and rags. And so you hit a button. So if you're a woman of color, then do something to make a difference and don't just bitch. Don't find all the things wrong, do something. Some of the people I've heard doing the most screaming have never seen at anything. And I've been around a while. So don't just sit back on your duff and bitch. Get up and do something, teach. You don't like start pointing fingers at people because automatically you've got a battle set up. So anyhow, okay, I'll shut up now. I hope that answered what you wanted me to know. Work together, teach. Jill used to say, each one teach one, and I loved that. That was one of the best things. I mean, that was so special that she did. She and Vi were amazing and really got them to do it.
Hey, Judy, Vi said you tell it to him, twin. She's here.
Okay, you rascal twin of mine. You know, she was my twin. Vi's my twin. We've been doing this a long time. I call her the evil twin, and then she tells me I'm the evil twin. But yeah, just the thing, we're twins. We were born on the same day. It's just she's she's about 5 years younger than me, that's all. So I was born about 5 years ahead of her, but she's still my twin. So you're going to get to see her painting, I guess, more tonight, Vi.
Should we unveil the surprise, or should we hold it, Judy?
Oh, it's up to you. You and Honey are I'm just gonna.
It's your surprise, so I'm not going to unveil anything you don't want me to.
Oh, well, okay. I'll tell it then. There's a story with this. It goes back a long way. Vi's been waiting for this since 1988, I think 88 or 89, Vi, I think. When Sashi was really sick, it was 1987. When Sashi was really sick, I had to get her to Sloan Kettering. It was the last chance we had for her to get treatment for cancer, and it was an experimental program. We didn't even know if we could get her in, and I needed to raise money to get her there. I sold my car that I babied for years and tried to build back up. But I also took some of my paintings that I had from my very first one-woman show, and I raffled them off. I sold raffle tickets. And Lil that was at Lil in 87. No, Lil in 88. It was Lil 88. And I sold raffle tickets. And then the NLA, I did a surprise, but it was a fashion show, and all of the fashions in the show were auctioned off, and that money helped me get Sashi to New York and helped us get into an apartment while we were there. You know, how could I not love this community? But Vi won the biggest painting in there. It was about 7 feet long by about 5.5 feet tall, completely framed. It was the title piece of my show. I have no idea what happened to that painting. But of course, Vi had to fly out. There's no way she could take it with her. And she talked, now I didn't know this. I thought Vi had lost her mind because she kept saying, where's my painting? I don't owe you a painting. What are you talking about? You won the raffle. You got the painting. And she said, no, she had talked to Steve Madoff and told him she couldn't take it. And so he said, that's okay. We'll re-raffle that and Judy can do one for you that you can take. Well, the thing is, he never told me that. I never knew that. So I thought she lost her mind. I said, okay, twin, I love you. It's okay, that's okay. But then once she explained it to me, which was about 1.5 years ago, I went, oh, okay. So I started on this painting of her. And it's in its very base stage. It's just barely blocked in. But it is a portrait of Vi and as her alter ego, which is also Lilith. But Lilith as vampire, Lilith as a powerful woman, Lilith as, I always called her the mother of independent women. And Kip has the original Lilith that I did. This one is absolutely nothing like that one because this one's a portrait of Vi. So we can show it if you want.
Oh, please do. It is beautiful.
Okay. I'm going to have to turn off the light so you can see it a little better.
Vi says, Judy, that the man who was next in line actually bought the painting and added more money to the pot. And it was an...
Oh, I didn't know that. But this is Vi as Lilith. And she doesn't have clothes on yet. She will be clothed. But this is what she looked like when I met Vi back then. So again, we're just blocked. There's nothing finished at all. And it's a street in New Orleans. It's going to be where the old lights are there, and you see some of the lighting. There are balconies and stuff that are going to go in. But right now, I'm just working on getting her the way I want it. And then the wolf is blocked in, so you can see where it's going to go. I have to do that. I don't know how to do it any other way. It's just how I've always done it. Nobody ever taught me. I just started.
Wow. Wow. So Judy and I, for everybody that's on, there's about 40 people, Judy, and everyone that's on, Judy and I talked about this before we went on. Judy and I have done some sacred art workshops at universities, and our last one was was Jay, Judy, and I in Toulouse, right outside of Toulouse, France. And so next week on a Friday night in this spot, we're going to do a sacred art demonstration. And Judy will talk about the use of metals and her art at that time. So if you want to spread the word, Vi says, I am both amazed and very, very humbled, Judy, from seeing your painting. It's gorgeous. So Judy, we said that tonight we would talk about the Northwest. We would talk about Portland and we would talk about Seattle. And we can go back in time into the 80s. And let's take a look at the 80s leather. and what it was like to be a leather woman in the 80s in the Northwest. Can you tell us what it was like, friendships, organizations, plays? What was play like at that time?
Well, it was pretty tight. I mean, we were pretty tight-knit community, and we had to be because that was kind of our protection. There were a lot of raids and stuff still happening. You know, people could lose their kids because of being in the scene, and it was a very actually dangerous time in some ways, but it also kind of added to the excitement of it. It's we would have, when we had play parties, okay, there was it was about then in those 80s, we had the Seattle Dungeon Guild was a mixed play space. It was on Pike Street on Capitol Hill, and you had to go through it. It had been, I think it became an REI sports store. It was an office building, and it had big windows, and to go in, you had to go through these walls of sheets. You had to go through this hallway of sheets to get into the surface, because the sheets covered the windows and had plastic holding them up all the way through the hallway, so you couldn't just like walk in and be there. You had to go through this aisle of things and check in when you got there. That was the first public or organization run play space that was normal. I mean, not normal. How do you say? It was one that was ongoing. It was really happening. And so when we had an event, they would have play spaces. Sometimes there would just be a big play party and everybody would show up, and that's what you did. You walked in, and downstairs, upstairs was usually a demonstration. I remember the first time I went in there, it was Tony DeBlas doing his rope demonstration with a young couple. These young men were being tied together and bound together, and it was hanging. It was a suspension hang, and it was all this beautiful rope work that looked like a giant spider web with them in the center of it, and it was backlighted with blue lights. It was beautiful. But up there was that. Then you could also go over and have food and hang out. Then you went downstairs. One side was women, the other side was men. Yeah, the old Seattle Boxing Club. Yep. I just saw from Lainey and Julia. So yes, that's exactly what it was, the Seattle Boxing Club. And but for us, the Portland women, we used to play with, we would have play parties with the Seattle women sometimes, but often it was our own groups. The first one that was there was Catharsis, and that was just pre my becoming involved in the Portland community. That was it was just folding as I came into the community. I moved there from Arizona. It was like 1983, 82 or 83. And then we had, oh gosh, I can't remember the name. If there was another one. Well, the Defenders of Mithra was really it was a Levi Leather Club, motorcycles, but also some of us were leather dykes that were SM players, and so we got along pretty good. You know, we had our parties that usually they were private. You did them in your own house. I know our basement had a play space. Robin and Molly, their house, there was always we used to have some really killer parties at Robin and Molly's. And we all kind of watched out. We had to protect ourselves. So we all kind of watched out for each other. Portland Power and Trust, yes, but I was one of the ones to start that. But we were later. It was a little bit later than Catharsis. There was something else in between, then the Defenders of Mithra. Then we started Portland Power and Trust. And the way we started it was we put up a sign. We put up a bunch of signs that said, okay, we're going to have this SM group start. Anybody interested to show up. We were going to have the meeting at the primary domain, and it was the fancier club for women in Portland, and because the 927 was our bar, that was our hangout. You know, do all kinds of dirty things on the floor bar. But there was also JR's cell, which was kind of, we could have play parties, but it was very, I mean, not play parties, but we could have gatherings there sometimes. And we had to be really careful because what we did in the bars, though, because then our bars would be shut down. So we had to be very cautious. But we had play parties. We started having play parties and this was when NLA was starting to happen. We were having events, and we would rent warehouses, and you had to be vetted I just learned what vetting mean, because that's not what but somebody had to bring you in. Somebody had to know you for you to be able to come in there. And we policed ourselves. We had our own DMs. And they were players, you know, there wasn't some little newbie kid, because I remember a little later on, we'd have these little newbies in being DMs, and they didn't even know what they were doing. I had a few problems there myself because I play rough, or back then I played pretty rough, and freaked one of them out. It took somebody who knew me to come in and say, oh, that's never mind, that you just get out of here, go on. And they took over, and Deb took care of the door for me. But anyhow, we started having parties and playing in warehouses, but usually before that it was in people's homes, and you had to really know the people. My first connection with the Seattle crowd was meeting. I had been asked by Sashi, bless her heart, to judge the Oregon State Leatherwoman contest. And I'm like, okay, I'll do that. Well, J.C. Collins and Lamar Van Dyke were also judges for, oh gosh, am I supposed to be saying their whole names? I don't know. Anyhow, sorry you guys if you don't want me saying your names. I'll try not to. But they were also judges, and I was sitting there at the table. There were like four of us, and there were I think two women running, but one of them, I mean, neither one of them were leather women. They you know, they were SM all right, but that back then we called it stand and model. They liked wearing their leather and just hanging out and being cute. And so I'm looking at JC and Lamar, and I said, what the hell is this? These aren't leather women. You know, we're the leather women. Why do we have real leather women doing this? And so it's like, what the hell? And so Lamar looks at me with her self and said, well, why don't you run then? Me? Hell no, I'm not running for that. No, I'm not doing that. That's not my style. I'm not doing that. And and that's actually how they conned me into running for Portland Leatherwoman when I won, and then went on to Emsel by me shooting my mouth off bitching because leather women never ran for these things, and yet we had these contests, which were just stupid if it wasn't leather women running, because the whole point was to represent leather women and try to make it easier for us to be who we were, more openly. Anyhow, I'm sorry, I just keep going, don't I?
That's all.
Let me
follow up with a question related to that. When you look at that period of time and you look at today, okay, we got 30, 35 years in there, right? So
oh my God,
can you tell me, what do you miss most about those days, and what do you like about these days even better? What do you miss from the past? And
well, the thing I think I missed, I miss the most is the connections we had back then. I mean, the women I knew and met that were my friends in, actually, it wasn't just Portland and Seattle. We were the West Coast crowd. They came up from San Francisco and LA, some even from Palm Springs. So we had Palm Springs, LA, San Francisco, Portland, Seattle, and Vancouver, Canada. And we ran back and forth. One of my fun stories was us all these tough leather dykes. I mean, you got us, we were like tough. We actually were a little tough. But I used to say that we're lucky that we survived. We all lived through it and nobody went to jail. Not in my immediate crowd anyhow. It was close a few times, but no. Anyhow, and rumors were worse then, but we knew everybody. So you could say, hey, what the hell is this? And they'd go, it's, this is what happened. Oh, okay, cool. But, or not cool, but either way. Anyhow, we were having a big gathering up in Vancouver, Canada. They were doing their first leather men and women contest in Vancouver. Mac McKinnon of Mac's Leathers was one of the sponsors, and Amy and Johanna, and there was a whole bunch of the women and men from Vancouver, Canada that were just amazing people too. And so we had all said, we're going to go up there. So what happened was a group came up from LA and San Francisco, stopped in Portland, and our house was kind of like the hangout place between south in the California area and south of Portland and north to Vancouver, Canada. So they would come, hang at our house and stay with different people. And then we'd all take off and head up and pick up the Seattle crowd. And then we went on up to Vancouver, Canada. Well, we always, we didn't go anywhere. We weren't carrying bags that weighed 200-300 pounds, I swear. We always had our little, our bottoms or submissives, or there weren't that many slaves back then, but there definitely, we did have slaves and masters. Anyhow, so, but whoever your submissive was, they were in charge of carrying all that shit and making sure it got with us and where we were going. And we decided that in Vancouver, we were gonna like shock all the locals, the local non-leather women and all these big tough leather dykes from Seattle and Vancouver and Seattle and on down the road. We were all gonna go out to one of the local bars and we were gonna be dancing and just be rough and ready, So we went out full gear. We had rented a room in the hotel above the bar. And we were, I think, like 3 or 4 stories upstairs. So all of our submissives had to haul all of our bags of gear up to that hotel room. And we were going to turn this hotel room into a play party. So we get into the bar. We're all being tough and cool and dancing and doing all of our things. Those girls went apeshit. We couldn't even almost not fight them off. They were coming at us so hard. They were like, oh yeah, hey, we're gonna get you guys. So we were backing off there a bit. Kind of not quite as tough as we thought we were. And then we all decided we're gonna head on up to our hotel room and have this big party. And we'd already had a contest. We'd done all that. We got there, played at danced and drank and did all our stuff at the bar. And then we went upstairs to the hotel room and we all walked in. And I've heard this shit more than once about taking your jacket off and throwing it. I'm an old bike rider. You take your jacket off. It's like not this precious cargo. It's a thing to protect your skin. You take it off and you drop it. That's what I drop it and I'd lay on it or sit on it or whatever. But so we're all coming in there and we're taking off jackets. We're taking off boots and we all like sit down all around this hotel room. It wasn't that big a hotel room, but I think there were at least 15, 20 of us. And this hotel room was packed with these women. There were a bunch of them on the bed with all of our gear laying everywhere in these big leather bags. And our submissives all sitting there very nice and doing what they were supposed to be doing. And here's all these tough leather dykes. Yeah, we're gonna do this stuff. We're gonna do all this playing now. That's us. We're gonna do it. They started talking about campfires, honey, by the way, and then somehow it went to Girl Scouts, and I'm like, I don't know nothing about no Girl Scouts. I'm a little hick Indian from the desert. I never was raised around no Girl Scouts. And then they started talking about s'mores. Well, I want to know, what is a s'more? What is that? They're talking about how great these things are. And I want to know, what's a s'more? So then they start talking to me about s'mores. We ended up spending most of that night talking about Girl Scouts and hanging out, leaning against there was nothing that went on. Nothing. We didn't even pick up a cane, nothing. And we had more fun just hanging out. But the point was, it didn't matter. We were together. And we had a great time because we were together. And we had this connection. Even though we were really separated by lots of space, I missed that connection. And when I knew we were in trouble was I had a big old house. This was after Sashi died, and she decided I couldn't live in our home. She wouldn't want me to live there. She didn't think I'd be able to make it. And she was pretty close. I've never been that kind of person, but it was pretty hard. And so I got this old house, and I had bought it, and I'd invited, it was a Lil, and it was the first Lil in Portland. I freaked out. It was the first time on my own home turf we were having play parties and meetings and all kinds of things in my own town, in a hotel, and one of the really big hotels, and the convention center. Like, holy crap. I know when we had it in Seattle the first time, I was afraid to go. But I was like, nope, I'm going, because I was the co-chair then. Jim Richards and I, my crazy brother from Dallas. I love that man, always will. But I had all these leather dykes, again, like you would know all the names. There was a whole bunch of them in my house. And we'd got up and we were having coffee, and breakfast was happening around in the kitchen for anybody that wanted it. And I had 7 bedrooms in the house, so we just had plenty of room. It was 3 stories and an attic and 7 bedrooms and a bath on every floor, so we were okay. So, and I can't remember who it was. It might have been JC, but I think Patrick Califia was there too. It was somebody, one of those people came upstairs and said, "You guys realize what's going on now?" And we're all like, "What?" He said, "We're chic now. Did you know that? We're chic." And I'm like, I don't want to be chic. I don't know how to be chic. I've never been able to be suave either. I had always fallen or tripped. So, but I think that's what I don't like about what's happened is a lot of people have become part of our community that have no idea about the community itself. They think, oh, that sounds like fun, and it's the thing to do. It makes me look good, so I'm going to do it. Not that it doesn't have the same commitment. And so that's my biggest problem with what's been going on today. And I think that's where a lot of the bitching and the sniping and the stuff like that happens. But what I do love right now is our young people. They are stepping up and stepping out. We've got some powerhouses, and I just hope that they don't let that, what do you call it, vitriol that comes from some harm them. I remember one of the things that we used to deal with was how some of the new people coming into our community would be hurt by someone who didn't know what they were doing. And sometimes that hurt could last forever.
Judy, can you tell us a story about meeting Jay and starting your relationship with Jay?
So, and I worry about that now, but I also know there are how I met Jay. Hello? Can I?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Okay.
All of a sudden, so I wanted to, I really appreciate how you took it to the present and talked about folks in the leather community. And, we talked about playing back in the day, but I'm seeing your nails, Judy. I'm looking at your nails and I'm thinking about the last couple play scenes. You're still playing, and you and Jay are traveling around and having a ball. Can you talk about meeting Jay and developing your relationship?
It's been really hard for her. I'm going to say this right now. It's been harder for me, I think. It doesn't seem to bother her as much as it bothers me. My physical health has been going down. Mostly it's pain. And I can't do the playing like I like to. So it's like I apologize before I punch her, because I used to be really good at punching. Of course, she swears I still punch like a Mack truck. So does Skip, but doesn't feel like a Mack truck to me. It hurts. But we used to have this joke. Tired top toys and tired top techniques. We used to brag about us going to have those workshops when we got older. Well, we're older now. I need them. I need to bring them back. But Jay, it's funny. I met Jay at Philadelphia Leather Pride the year that Cowboy Jen invited me to come and show my artwork. And I showed my art along with the library upstairs at the center where they had kind of gatherings coming and going there. And so Jay came to me. I had gone out and I had been hanging out with people and showing my art and talking and doing things with medicine and talking about the medicine and how it works and stuff like that. And I had gone out to smoke a cigarette because I smoked like a locomotive back then. And I came back in and I'd come up the stairs and Jay was standing out on the stairs. And she came up to me and she said, "Can I ask you, where would you know where I might get a set of turquoise cufflinks?" And I was like, whoa, I never had been asked that before. And I said, well, I don't right now because I'm not in Arizona where my connections would be, but I will ask one of my daughters to find a pair of turquoise cufflinks for me and I can send them to you. You just have to let me know how to get in touch with you and I'll send them to you. And she said, well, I'll give you the money. I said, no, you don't need to do that. I'll just give them to you. That's okay. And all the time I'm looking at her because I had decided I am single for the rest of this life. I don't want any more partners. I don't want any more relationships like that. I'm doing okay. You know, I was happy. I was doing my artwork. Nagin was driving me crazy, but I was happy. And I was showing and just really focused on doing medicine and doing the art. And all the time I'm telling her about these, I'm looking at her and I'm thinking, God, this is a cutie. This is such a cutie. She was this little butch dandy. And I just loved it. And it was like, oh, I could do so much stuff with this one. It was so nice. And then I said, no, get your head out of your ass and walk. Go away. Don't do this. Don't do this. Just let it go. I'm like, okay. But she looked at me. It's funny. It used to bother me a whole lot. One of my girl for many years, the biggest problem I had with her when I first met her, she was a sweetheart and I liked her a lot, and she wanted to play with me and I wanted to play with her, but I said, no, I'm not going to play with somebody who can't look at me. she's got to look at, she was always looking at my boots. Well, get your eyes off my boots. I'm up here. Talk to me, not my boots. And if you're that timid, then nah, because I've never wanted anybody on their knees, you know, not unless I put them there. And that would be forcefully. Anyhow, so I said, no, not happening. Get out of here. You don't want this. Just keep going. So I did. Well, we had family dinners back then. We still, you know, I still have those. I've always loved them. But it's where you cook a big meal and everybody that you are connected to comes for dinner. And we, at Negrams, we would often have, you know, no less than 8 to 10 people, and sometimes as many as 25 come for dinner. And Kip brought Jay. Kip was being Jay's daddy then, and I didn't know it. And she brought Jay, and I thought, oh my, look at this. This kid's back in my life here. But they were, Jay was not really used to having anybody who learned how to be a daddy the way Kip did, because Kip learned from Negram. And Negram was really very, and I've never been like that. You do what works. And with, you didn't have that many absolutes, a few, like don't be late. That was a big one. If you were late, you were in trouble. Kelly has a spoon somewhere that still has her name written in, a big wooden spoon with her name written in the bowl of it, because every time she was late, that spoon came out. But anyhow, she brought Jay, and we were all having talk and laughing, and it was really good. You know, Jay was a sweetheart. And I thought, oh, we're keeping you. And I told her that. And that's how I get some of my family. I say, okay, we're keeping you. So, you know, you can't get away now. I'm keeping you. That's it. And so she was okay. And then back then it was pretty hard because I had moved with and left everything in Arizona except my art stuff. And none of us in that house really had a steady income. Well, I had my Social Security, but that was it. And so it was a very hard time. And Kip, bless her heart, Kip would make sure that we had food. And so would my son Raymond. Raymond is also one of my adopted kids who's in Pennsylvania. But and so they would make sure we had food. I would always buy food, but Negram never bought food, ever. He bought furniture. I bought food. And then I cooked the food. And then I cleaned the kitchen, and then I went on strike. And I said, oh, we're not doing this anymore. You clean, I cook. That's it. I'll buy the food, I'll cook the food. No more cleaning. So poor John was down scrubbing that kitchen for days. However, so Jay then became part of the family. Because they heard about I had 2 things on my bucket list, and they were asking me about my bucket list. And I said, well, I have a couple of things. One, I want to go to Paris, and I want to dress in full regalia and paint on a Paris street corner. I promised my friend RC I was going to do that I would go to Paris and I would paint and be my crazy Apache self on that street corner and paint. And the other one was I wanted to go to Maine, and I wanted to eat Maine lobster in Maine until I popped. I just wanted to eat it till I couldn't eat anymore. So Kip and Jay decided, yes, I would do that. They took me to, they decided they would take me to Maine. So they made a deal with me, though. These are, you know, they're connivers, I'm telling you. Their deal was they would take me to Maine. I could eat Maine lobster until I couldn't eat another bite if I would learn to boogie board while we were there. And I said, you know, what? At that time I was, 68, 69? What the hell? I'm going to learn how to boogie board? You want me to boogie board? I don't even know. I can swim good, but I never did anything like that. So I said, okay, I'll do it. Well, you know what? I learned to boogie board. I also ate lobster till I was feeding it to the pups under the table. We had 14 lobsters that came off the boat. I sure did like those. I still do, but now I can't kill them, so I won't eat them. I don't eat lobster much anymore because if you eat it, you have to be able to take its life to eat it and respect that life. And I can't do it anymore. I just can't. So I don't. But I sure loved it. The other one was the trip to Paris. Kip and Jay decided I needed to go to Paris and do my painting on a street corner. So Kip planned this whole trip and made all the arrangements. We got like an apartment in Montmartre, up on the mountain in Paris. And I was going to get on my regalia and sit on the street corner and paint. And then Kip got really sick and she couldn't go with us, so it was just Jay and I going. And Kip had also was supposed to do a workshop for the Easter Women's Conference in Leather Conference in the Easter Leather Women's Conference in Berlin. And I was asked if I would take Kip's place and do that. And the talk was about American families. They don't have family arrangements like we do. They don't have leather families like we do. And so they wanted to know how we did it, how that worked. And I could talk about that. So I agreed to do that. So we went to Berlin first for me to do that workshop. And so I was teaching our friend that we were staying with in Berlin, had a new young man, and he had not been involved in the leather community. And so he wanted to learn how to play with her. And she was a professional, so she knew what she was doing. So he was intimidated. So she asked me if I would, because she would trust me, would I teach him how to play with her? And I said, sure, we'll do that. So we get there. The place was just jammed. It was so packed. They're trying to find a place, but she had arranged for this little room with a curtain. It had like a barber chair that you could lean back or lean forward. And 3 of us could fit in there barely. And so Jay took my jacket. I had a long leather jacket, trench coat. So she's holding my trench coat and her suit and tie and everything, standing outside this curtain of the door and guarding it. She looked like one of the royal guard, you know, she just didn't have the hat, but she was standing there holding that coat. And I looked at her when I walked in and I thought, that is a hot child. That is such a hot child. And she and Kip weren't being daddy boy anymore. I had, by that time I was living with them and I didn't step into that relationship at all, never would, and except being their friend and letting them talk to me when they needed to, individually or together, it didn't matter. And but I still thought she was just a hot little thing. Anyhow, I went in there. That was the other thing. We didn't have any toys. They didn't have any toys. I didn't have any toys. I didn't plan on playing. I went to paint on a street corner. So Phoenix was there, and I thought, well, Phoenix is going to have toys. You know, Phoenix never goes anywhere without tons of toys. So I ran down the hall. I knew where Phoenix was, and she was just getting ready to start a scene. And I ran her and I said, Phoenix, you got any toys? I need some toys to play. I need this and this and this. And she said, yeah, I've got them, but they're at my hotel room. I said, oh, no, that's not going to work. Okay, we've done this before. You know, we don't used to have toys. You have to build that bunch. So I went back to the room and I said, okay, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to show you how to play with no toys, but these and these. So we had a hell of a hot scene with biting and claws. And my nails are like real nails. Anyhow, they're really hard, so I have to keep them short. But they can do some serious damage. Anyhow, so I taught them, and we had the best scene. It was just wonderful. And then when it was time for me to step back and let them go with their scene, I stepped outside and I looked at Jay, and it just hit me. So I said, so you want to play? And Jay went, yeah. I said, okay, so let's find some place to play. Well, there wasn't any place to play there that was not crowded. I mean, you couldn't even move your elbows in that room. So I said, okay, we're going back to the house. We're going back to the apartment. We're going to play there. So we did. We went back and we played. And I had a great time. And then I put Jay to bed. And I was like, wow, that was pretty hot. I really enjoyed that. And then we went from Berlin to Paris, and we played a little more in Paris, and I don't know, it just happened. It just worked, and we've been together ever since. And it's funny, we were pretty good friends. She's a great sous chef. That's what she did mostly, was we cooked together. We did a lot of cooking, and Jay kept my kitchen going for me while I was doing my thing over there. So she kind of still does that, but now she's an amazing cook too. So it's like it was supposed to be. Of course, after we got together, I kept saying, I must have been out of my mind. What was I even thinking? So
Judy,
not only do I love her like crazy, but I really, really, really like her.
I like
She's
her
a good
too.
human being.
So Judy, we have
Good.
we
Okay, there's that story.
have we have two more questions, and we only have time
Okay.
for one. So I'm going to save the one for next week, and I'm going to ask you the one that kind of goes with the lobster story. Okay, let me ask you. This is from Lainey. She said, Judy, can you please tell the wonderful story about you eating soft shell crab with Gloria Steinem?
Oh my God. That was at the International Women's Year Convention in 1977. It was called the IWY. It was where they took women from all across the country, and we went to set up a plan of action that would be presented to Congress. Jimmy Carter was president at the time, and he was a strong proponent for us to do this. Bella Abzug was the chair of that committee. And so we went there. And I had never been away from home. I had never been on a plane. I was over at that point 9 months pregnant. I was expecting my last daughter. She didn't even have a name, but she got her name there. I had been sick and in the hospital through most of that time, and I was determined that I was going. So since my hospital, they were crazy because they said, we've never had somebody like you in here. They had news press people coming in and doing interviews and stuff. I had never had that kind of deal going on either. But so we were at the Sheraton in Houston, and my roommate was Vera Brownstar. She was like my mom. She was the tribal chair for the Yavapai Apache Nation in Arizona. Anyhow, we were like the second night of the conference, and we were all going to go out and have this big fancy dinner. Well, I'd never been to any fancy restaurants either. That just didn't happen. And so, so we go to this big fancy restaurant, and Sudai, who was a senator from Arizona, had become a friend. Actually, Mary Crisp was at that time chair of the National Republican Party, and she was also a friend. And I have to say, at that time, I was registered as a Republican because even though I didn't agree with much of what he said, I liked Barry Goldwater. Actually, I liked Jack Murphy, his top assistant more than that. Anyhow, Jack and Mary Murphy. But so we're all going to go out to this fancy restaurant and have this fancy dinner, and we were going to have seafood and Arizona Indian desert seafood not on the list. Fish was pretty taboo, or it was. Apache people at that time, according to my grandma, Apaches don't eat fish. We don't eat fish. So, okay, makes sense. We live in a desert, fine. But so we're going for the seafood, and I didn't know what to order. And so there were a lot of women there at the table who were not from the Arizona delegation. And Gloria was one of those. The woman that was sitting next to me, her name was Carol. Gosh, I can't remember her last name, but she was a reporter for the Arizona Republic Phoenix Gazette. She was covering the conference, but she was primarily focused on me because they had this, very pregnant Indian going off to Houston and taking all my medical records with me. And they had actually set up a birthing center in the back of the conference hall because I was expected to deliver at any moment, and went into labor actually the plenary session. So, but managed to get through. However, I ordered stuffed crab. Carol said, you should order that. It's going to be pretty good. You never eaten seafood. You might like that. Okay, so I ordered stuffed crab. And I remember we also had snails in butter. They call it escargot. We were going to have escargot. Okay, we're going to have the escargot. And I asked Vera, I said, Vera, what's escargot? She said, those snails. I ain't no snail. Why do people eat snails? Snails? No. I didn't understand that. And so there were about 6 of us, I think, who were native delegates from Arizona. And Martha Ahern was the one of us she was like a radio personality. She was based out of Yuma, and she was used to the world. She was a worldly native. And so she was right next to the senator up at the head of the table. I was back down here on the side, and they brought out that escargot and they passed it around, and they went to Martha. I think she was like the 3rd person in a row. And we all the Indians at the table are watching Martha eat this snail. And we're watching her. She picks it out and she puts it in her mouth, and she has it in her mouth for a while. And we're watching. Okay. She swallows the snail, and they offered her another. And she said, no, thank you. Right then nobody, not another native at that table would bite those snails. It's like, she didn't take the second one. We're not eating it. And so we didn't. But anyhow, we got our food. And it's funny because one of the worst things you can do, one of the most, I could say embarrassing, but embarrassing yourself or being embarrassed, being foolish, which we all know everybody is a big thing for an Apache woman. We're much more, I fell down a lot on that one. But so you don't do things to embarrass yourself or embarrass your family. And so I ordered this thing that Carol said to get, and everybody's sitting around, and Gloria was sitting more up front with the senator. And I can't remember how many of us, but it was a long table and we were all together. And so they brought out our dish, and it was beautiful. I mean, here was this big fried, beautiful thing, and so we're eating it, and I cut it and I bite it, and I'm chewing it, and I swallow the first bite, and I'm hesitant to take the next bite, but I can't embarrass myself or the people I'm with. So I cut it and I take the second bite, And Carol leans over and she said, Judy, how do you like your crab? And I said, well, it kind of tastes like shells. And she said, let me see that. She said, oh, sweetie, it is shells. The crab is taken out and it's mixed with things and it's stuffed back in the shell and then they fry the shell. Why do they fry that shell and make it look so good that you're supposed to eat it? It wasn't soft shell, it was a hard shell. And she said, it is shell. And I was so embarrassed, I thought I was going to die. And everybody at the table was laughing. They were all laughing. And I learned a big lesson right then. I'm so glad I learned it then. That getting embarrassed over not knowing something is okay. It's, and they weren't laughing at me. They were laughing about the situation. And so, okay, I started laughing too, and it was okay. So I learned a big lesson right then. And it was one I've needed my whole life. Because every time I tried to be really cool, it never worked. I always tripped. So anyhow, that was the story. And Gloria was laughing just as hard as everybody else. You know, she's an amazing woman. And we got to be friends. We used to meet in DC. Her sister was in the same program in college that I was. She was in a criminal justice program. And so we used to talk about her sister going to school and her being an older woman and having started back to school. So, yeah, we got to be friends.
Judy, it was so good to hear that story again. I just finished transcribing my last interview with you for a feminist documentary. There's a college student who's actually going to turn your interview and parts into a movie. So I look forward to sharing that with you. And that's something that I'm working on right now. There's so many more questions and we can go on, but I promised Judy that we would hang out for an hour and that we would do this again next week. If you see the picture in the back, the painting in the back with all the women, we're going to talk about that next time, and using metals and doing sacred art together. But before we go tonight, I want to turn it over to our title holder who is sitting by the campfire, right, honey?
Whoa.
And are you unmuted by chance?
She's doing something.
Here we go. Okay. Yeah, my fire's dying out and I've had to walk away to stoke the fire several times, but I listen to every bit and I love these stories. Thank you so much for joining us tonight and letting us be a little bit part of hearing the history and just, you know, reveling. It's almost like, you know, getting to step back in time. Love it. And I love the painting.
Thanks for doing this.
You're such a joy. I thank you so much for joining us and hope we can see you again soon.
Right.
Okay, I will talk about doing the paintings. I show you how to do it. It's all up here. It's here and here.
Absolutely. And I also want to make One Woman a Drummer announcement. We have a dance contest, Judy, on Sunday. So folks right now are dancing to one song, 1 to 3 minutes. They're videoing themselves and they're sending it in. And then on Sunday, the judges look at them and decide who wins first prize. Star is hosting our Sunday night. It's 11 o'clock to us on the East. It's 8 o'clock on the Pacific Standard Time. And at the contest in September, I would say God willing, but I'll say Governor willing, right? That we're going to have a dance-off, right? Between those that won the dance contest last week and the winners this week. I see Kylie wrote, Kylie doesn't dance. Well, either do I. That's what makes this fun, you know, especially if you can't dance. So, Jay, if you could talk Judy into doing a jig for us and videoing it, our life would probably be complete, right?
You're really wanting me to
Yes.
embarrass myself again, right?
Right.
Okay, I could laugh that good.
So good.
That'd be great.
Thank you all for joining us tonight. Thank
Love
you,
it.
Judy. Thank you, honey. Thank
Thank you,
What's on
everybody.
it?
here.
I wish I could have
And,
seen everybody.
If you'd like to see
What
us
song,
on Sunday
Johnny?
night, we're going to be dancing away. On Monday night, I'm going to do a workshop on writing our histories. So it's not just Judy and Vi, it's all of us sharing our history. So I'm going to
Every
be
one of us has a story, and I want to.
Go ahead.
That's what I wanted to say. Get the stories of the women around you and tell yours. It's important.
Exactly,
Yes.
exactly. So we're going to have
Yes.
a workshop on Monday night about how to write all of our histories. And I have a free download that people can download from the presentation to get them started. So Judy, Jay's our technological guru here. Thank you so much. Judy and Jay were not on Zoom until a few days ago. They got on Zoom just for tonight. So we are thrilled.
Marvelous.
Thank you all. Good night.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, everyone.
I love you. Good night. Thank you for listening to me.